And what a lot of us didn't really see go under the radar, especially in those Olympic trials in Paris, there was a lot of noise about Jason Tatum not getting minutes, but also Anthony Edwards, low-key, got even less minutes. And it's really for the same reasons why some of the more American-born talent can't reach up to that MVP level that we see Jokic, SGA, and even guys like Giannis that have gotten on in the past 8+ years. James Harden is the last MVP American-born player, I believe, back in 2018. Again, I promise to take you guys off your daily algorithms, as we will touch base on this subject on a multitude of layers, as in the second part, we're going to hear why the league is shifting and how structurally, with the influx of money coming in, there's a lot of things going unnoticed and just being pushed to the side, which is really going to impact the league in a major way.
And I'm not talking about skills. I'm talking about the game. 5 people working together in unison with one goal in mind, being better than the other 5 people on the court.
That right there is the hurdle that Anthony Edwards has to overcome just to get to that next level where SGA is at. Because the fact that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got his team over the hump, where the average age was 25 years old, barely 25. This team was so young. After they won the title, they didn't even know how to open the champagne bottles. And Anthony Edwards, just a few years prior, he was eliminating SGA in just a play-in tournament while having more polished players on his team. Guys like Karl Anthony Towns, they got Gobert, Mike Conley. So Edwards, in a way, he was set up to be ahead of SGA. But again, he has to overcome that hurdle. We've seen him in that Western Conference Finals against Luka. The playmaking wasn't on point. Last season, it looked like he elevated, but he hit a wall as soon as he ran into OKC.
Cade Cunningham and Cooper Flagg are the first ones that come to mind about those young players that have a chance to represent us successfully in international play. I know some of you out there are enthralled with Anthony Edwards, but at some point, we just need to accept that he does not have the ability to harness his incredible talent in a winning fashion. I know, he's only 24 years old. Look at all he's done already. Give him a chance to grow up. I've heard the same refrain about Jonathan Kuminga shortly after the Warriors traded him to Atlanta, or the entire time that he was with the Warriors. They were giving up too early on a kid who was only 23.
Again, these are prime examples of how a lot of these guys are running into a wall and they're not translating or just getting past a certain level to get that American-born MVP, regular season MVP kind of player. Anthony Edwards is the highest form of it. We're about to see, can he get to that next level like how SGA did about 2 seasons ago when the Oklahoma City Thunder went from not even making the playoffs, getting eliminated in the play-in, to finishing first in the Western Conference.
To all of which I would say sometimes it's not about calendar age, but NBA experience. Ant is wrapping up his 6th year in the NBA. Yeah, Michael Jordan didn't win his first championship until his 7th season, but he'd already won league MVP and defensive player of the year and had been in the conversation for most valuable player 4 seasons.
And also in the late 80s, there was a season where the Pistons were pretty much sweeping every team in the playoffs. Then Michael Jordan took them 7 games. So there was an element of where people could see, hey, that guy's on the come up and he's about to get to the final level at some point. It's only a matter of time. With Anthony Edwards right now at this very moment, we're seeing him hit a wall as soon as he goes up against OKC, whether it be the second round or the conference finals. And the same thing when he faces the Denver Nuggets. Once he starts going up against these teams where they have multiple players making great decisions and also playing defense, he tends to struggle bringing these games in the closing moments of these fourth quarters.
He had 4 scoring titles. He had reached the conference finals twice and took the Pistons to 6 and 7 games.
Yeah, once again, that season where he took the Pistons to 6 or 7 games, most teams in the playoffs got swept by the Pistons.
Is Ant anywhere close to any of that? Looking at the overall talent on the Timberwolves roster and the raw talent that Ant does have, there's no way that he should be fighting to make it into the top 6 teams in the Western Conference, he and the Timberwolves. He has been to the conference finals the last 2 years, but in both cases, he got dog walked by the opponent, losing in 5 games in series that were not close.
Facts, against the Oklahoma City Thunder and also in that Western Conference Finals against the Dallas Mavericks. It wasn't close.
With Jordan, you could see the growth, the knocking on the door. Ant has added pieces to his personal game, but he still doesn't grasp the big picture. How to apply those skills in a winning way. He still does not appear to have any idea of what it takes to lead or to win. His success is still coming off of his raw talent, not his understanding of how to manipulate and control the game.
Now, I'm going to shoot Ant-Man some bail. Michael Jordan did have Phil Jackson. Just like how LeBron James, he had Pat Riley. Don't get it twisted. When he went to South Beach, LeBron James, for the first time, he had to bend the knee and play according to the system. He couldn't just be in that LeBron James style that he likes to play in, just dribbling the ball at the top of the perimeter, and his teammates have to wait at the three-point line and guess when they're going to get the ball. But Michael Jordan went through a phase with Phil Jackson where he finally learned how to trust his teammates. Anthony Edwards, in a way, who knows? Maybe he needs like a Coach Popovich or, hell, even a phone call from Pat Riley down in Miami. Coach Spo, having Anthony Edwards could bring out a different player. Who knows? I would say the same thing for Ja Morant. It doesn't get talked about too much, but he does have a good basketball IQ on him, especially when he first came into the league. That was his reputation. If he somehow gets himself down there in Miami and just have to buy into a system that Pat Riley and Coach Spo has set up, the sky could be the limit.
His success is still coming off of his raw talent, not his understanding of how to manipulate and control the game. He talks about it, but he does not do it when it matters most. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But we have to stop talking as if he's destined to be something when he's not trending in the right direction. Maybe just give it a beat or two and look somewhere else.
That somewhere else could be the Minnesota Timberwolves actually getting a point guard who could actually run the system in the closing moments of the game. Just get Ant-Man into his spots and get the other teammates involved also.
Because this is what anyone who wants to defend the way Ant plays or Americans are developed today has to understand. The game being taught at the AAU level is child's play. It's not complicated. It is wholly inferior to the way the game was taught in the past and is taught and played overseas.
That is facts. Even on the defensive end, a lot of these AAU teams, they just start zoning up.
This is one of those instances where being behind the times is actually an advantage. Not all progress is good progress. That is why the best players overseas are now coming over and dominating. Or how players who are physically limited but fundamentally sound can punch far above their weight.
AKA Luka. Luka has no speed, barely any athleticism, and he's dominating. Luka is another prime example of when sometimes you see certain online NBA media personalities downplay Larry Bird. The fact that Luka dominates today, Larry Bird will definitely kill in today's game.
That is why the best players overseas are now coming over and dominating. Or how players who are physically limited but fundamentally sound can punch far above their weight. Jalen Brunson and Fred VanVleet immediately come to mind.
Also, I'm going to throw in Jimmy Butler in there. How the hell did he make the NBA Finals 2 times in an era where a lot of the analytical, aka the Salone Conference crowd, is telling NBA audiences that the mid-range is dead? You also have Kawhi Leonard in that very same era winning an NBA championship while just having Pascal Siakam and Kyle Lowry.
There's a difference between the NBA and international games. But anyone who can succeed in the international game just needs opportunity and time to adjust to the NBA game, to flourish. They don't have to level up as much as recognize the weaknesses and exploit them. For Americans, it's a different story. We've shaped the NBA rules to the point that Ant, as an example, is hamstrung playing the international game. No defensive 3 seconds means he doesn't get a free run at the rim if he beats his man off the dribble. And he doesn't get to start that run at the rim by taking a step or two before dribbling the ball, as the NBA allows and FIBA doesn't. And he isn't going to be bailed out by lunging into a defender on the perimeter because the international game allows a degree or 3 of more physicality, especially on the perimeter. No one paid attention to the fact that in the gold medal game against France in the 2024 Olympics, Ant played 9.5 minutes. Only Bam Adebayo played less. Drew Holiday played twice as many minutes as Ant. Jason Tatum played more than Ant.
Now that right there is very telling. As much as the NBA media made a huge ordeal out of Jason Tatum winning the NBA Finals and not getting enough minutes in the Olympics, what really went under the radar is Ant-Man even getting less. Sheesh. Once again, that very same ceiling that Ant-Man is running into when he goes up against teams like the Thunder, the Denver Nuggets, shit, who knows, maybe even this season, the San Antonio Spurs with Wemby. Just that very same ceiling is what caused him to have less minutes than Jason Tatum in the Olympics. Your playstyle has to be tailor-made in a team concept. This shit is crazy because it's the same way to win an NBA championship.
Why? Because Drew knew how to play with all the other star talent, collecting 4 assists and only 1 turnover. Because Tatum can impact the game without having the ball in his hands. Ant, 1 turnover, no assists. He got more minutes but was even less effective against Serbia in the semifinals. And I don't mean to pick on Ant, but I feel compelled to point all of this out because he is, more often than not, the #1 American player that everyone points to as being the next him. At this point, that feels more like wishful thinking than anything else.
No, I wouldn't say it's wishful thinking. The media is more infatuated, by his aura, his quote-unquote American swag. We already know what it is. That's another dilemma that Adam Silver has on his hands. The media that normally promotes the game, like ESPN, they don't necessarily know how to market the international star. They're only used to marketing guys like LeBron, Kobe, Jordan, Magic. There's a certain charisma and aura and just look that these guys have that they've been using a copy and paste formula since the 80s, and now they have to innovate. SGA is a prime example. He has the style, he does all the winning. He's from Canada though, and low-key he does have the same cockiness as Anthony Edwards. He just displays it a lot different. I would say a marketing rollout like Penny Hardaway had with the doll. The doll was the one that displayed all the arrogance and just ego, and Penny was pretty chill, but he let his game do the talking, the same way SGA does.
That's the other part of this equation that troubles me. Jokic, Wemby, Luka, and Shea aren't just more talented. They also are incredibly thoughtful and intelligent in front of the cameras. They speak with a certain combination of confidence and humility that is admirable. It's not as if there aren't American players who do that. Jalen Brunson and Jason Tatum immediately come to mind as presenting well, being thoughtful about what they say and how they say it. Jaylen Brown is controversial and I would say in some cases divisive. But in the case of Jalen and Jason, they also aren't players who are vying for NBA top dog status. The fact is, there isn't an American player right now who comes close to checking all the boxes. And it remains to be seen if there was one in the pipeline, which is why I believe it's time to take a hard look at that pipeline and maybe take a cue from how the one on the other side of the Atlantic is built. It's time that we import more than talent. It's time that we import a method and a mindset.
Adam Silver has definitely tried to make attempts to control that pipeline of just how players come into the league. We've seen the NBA launch G League Ignite, and it didn't necessarily pan out. I don't think the NBA is as good developing players like the NCAA. Even on a marketing tip, guys get way more exposure playing in that system. But again, the NBA is facing a lot of things coming in all at once. The amount of money coming into the league is not necessarily because there's a demand coming from the fan base. It's really the media business overall consolidating so much that sports now is a prime real estate. So there's private equity that wants in. Also, the Saudis from the Middle East want a stake. The analytical/science and data crowd is now working in the league and just making things run way more efficient, which actually works well with all this private equity money trying to come in to maximize that to the fullest. So now in this part of the segment, we'll touch base on how the league is going through a lot of these changes, as we'll hear from an NBA insider, as he even expressed that outside entities that manage the wealth of Nike even let them know that NBA players today do not have the same influence as they once did. Once again, it's hard for the NBA to innovate as all this influx of money is coming into the league. They're opening things up for expansion teams. They're trying to go into Europe. Private equity is trying to come in. The Saudis are trying to come in with money. A lot of things are happening all at once, but what's getting swept under the rug is the demand of the NBA game from the fans' perspective. That's declining. But you guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
The big problem, and this is a 100,000-foot view about what I'm about to say. The problems that confront the NBA currently are largely because of science and money. And what I mean by that is, even if you want to put analysis, people use the word analytics, and they get their backs up and they either defend it or attack it. Let's just use the word analysis. Like you were describing, like Ewing and Jordan wanted to play because that's what they played basketball for a living. Okay, so analysis science has come into the league, and basically teams are like, our data, tracking shows that you have a 17% increase of injury if you play today. Like nobody ever thought of that when Ewing played. That's science coming into the game, and as a result, they're good science decisions, but they're not good basketball decisions. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying science comes into it. And the same thing with the tanking. At some point, like, the people with management degrees, like people who had master's degrees, people who would otherwise have worked for McKinsey or for Ernst & Young got in the room, either because the owner put them there, because the GM hired them.
Or the owner was already working with these kinds of people. I'm pretty sure all their wealth management or just the other business ventures that they have, there was already a comfortability of just understanding how these people work and just seeing the results. So why not translate that when it comes to their NBA business? It sounds like a good idea, and it probably is, but we also got to factor in that the NBA is an entertainment product. And now in this current media landscape, it's so fractured and audiences have a lot more options than in previous generations. Big data and science and just overall efficiency has been good for the NBA as far as money, but they are in the entertainment business. Let's not get that twisted. As we continue to hear from Brian Windhorst right here, even he stated out of his own mouth when he confronted Daryl Morey about his analytics and how it's affecting the overall entertainment side of the NBA game. Daryl Morey let him know that marketing the game was not his problem. Very interesting.
The GMs used to be former players who we're going to play game 82, or we're going to try to win every game because that's what you do. We're basketball players. So I've been a basketball player since I was 7. That's what I do. I play to win every game. And the management experts came in and said, no, if you actually take a look at this, it doesn't make any sense to win 39 games. It makes way more sense to win 19 games for the next 4 years. And it is, again, in a vacuum, in a laboratory, it's absolutely correct. Like scientifically, it's absolutely correct, but it's hurt the game. The other thing is, this has nothing to do with the NBA, but we're in a massive changing media market. And, cable companies and broadcast networks and streamers are in an all-out fight for eyeballs in a fragmented market. And so they're just throwing money at live sports rights, which is why you're seeing all these leagues be created, because the incentive structure is there. And so the NBA isn't operating in its best manner, but money is flying at it, not only because of the media rights. And I think a well-played NBA game, or the push and pull of a playoff series where you have the amazing dynamic that develops over 2 weeks between the individual matchups. I love that. It's such a draw. I don't want to make it sound because I think the game is at the peak there, and I think the skill that has come in the game, I think the game is great. But the problem is that the game is not getting more money because more people love it. It's getting more money because of the fragmented media market and because their value. So they're operating in a world where the way they're doing their day-to-day, money is flying in. They can't eat. The NBA is trying to figure out how to control all of the money that's flying at it. I mean, I don't even think this European League is a good idea for about 10 different reasons. But the NBA has to do it because they've got literally people banging down the door trying to give them hundreds of millions. I don't think it's a good idea to expand. but the franchise values are exploding. They got people banging down the door, like multiple people, like the Celtics selling for $6.5 billion or $7 billion, and like the other group going, oh, I wanted my bid for $7 billion. How come you didn't take my bid for $7 billion? So how do you look the NBA in the eye and say, boy, this isn't really going well, when there is just a funnel of cash just flying in?
Now, for the first time, fans are seeing that the NBA is getting wealthier, and it's not because people are loving it a lot more. These are interesting times because we even see this scenario sort of play out in the economy. Ever since the pandemic, Wall Street, when they have their highs, it doesn't necessarily reflect mainstream, or AKA the average person. That exact scenario is mirroring the NBA right here. The media business just being so fractured and everyone's consolidating. A lot of that money is just being reallocated to just the NBA, the NFL, sports leagues in general, because they do have that demand, especially live. Matter of fact, there's also a monoculture when it comes to sports, where it's really one of the only relics left where you can get people to just consume a live event all at once. It is a powerful tool outside of just entertainment. You can have a lot of cultural sway when you possess something like that. Shit, we've seen in the last few years some of the political personalities trying to blur the lines and sort of creep into sports. Stephen A. Smith does this from time to time.
And, you can say, or somebody can say, well, but it's going to hurt the long term. And I agree. But it's very, very difficult to tell somebody that things need to change when, if the max play, when LeBron, Bosh, and Wade went to Miami, the max contract was like $17 million. I had it memorized in my head because for a year I was, calculating. So 17 million was the max in 2010. Okay. That's 16 years ago. You remember that Jordan made 30 million at the end of 1998, right? So granted, Jordan is not these players, but the best player in the NBA was making 30 million in the late 90s. And the best players in 2010, 12 years later, were making 17 million. Okay. So if you look at what happened to the NBA in the 2000s, it was a recession. It was a recession in the country too, by the way. They were tied in.
But Brian, let's not get it fucked up. It was a recession in the NBA, and that does not get talked about enough after Michael Jordan had left, and it didn't necessarily have anything to do with him. Basketball-wise on the court, that was one of the worst eras in the league. The final scores would be 78-72 or 69-73. A lot of players were trying to imitate Michael Jordan playing hero ball, not being as efficient as Michael Jordan, and also the way the league just allowed the physicality. It took away a lot of the art from the game. So there was not that much translation on television for fans to kind of keep in tune with. But just dialing this right back in, the correlation to that period straight through today is that in the future, even though the NBA is in a great deal right now, but in the future, looking at our crystal ball, with less fan engagement and with just the league today kind of ignoring that part with all the money just coming in and trying to juggle that, there's going to be a domino effect on the media side. These streaming companies are not like the broadcast networks. They do not need the NBA to be successful. That includes Amazon, Apple, Google, YouTube TV, etc. We could be looking at the contracts in the next television deal take a slight pay bump. But at the same time, the owners, especially these brand new owners coming into the league, they have moved these NBA teams into a brand new asset class where now the arenas are part of a complex real estate portfolio where you can have in the same ecosystem commercial real estate, shopping, a mall, hell, even a casino like the Dumont family's trying to do down there in Dallas. And that very same ecosystem would be profitable to the owners, and I'm not too sure if the players would get a cut of that money. That's revenue generated by the owners or just the investment groups, the same way the Golden State Warriors would have it set up where they're making money whether the Warriors play around that arena or not. They have fine dining, they collect commercial rents, even from certain tech companies. I believe Uber had an office around there. That's why a lot of the owners in recent years have been selling off these teams. And we're just seeing the new people coming in, even being wealthier or just having private equity or even Saudi money attached to them, like the guy that just purchased the Lakers.
Now the max players are hitting 60. So they've gone from 17 million to 60 million in 16 years. The previous 12 years, there was a recession. The next 16 years, what is that, 500%? Can't do the math, okay? Now, tell a player who's gone from 17 million to 60 million, the league's messed up. You should be playing more. How are they going to take that? Like, tell Anthony Davis that, boy, it's really messed up, the games played. He's like, of course I'm counting my money. Every single year I've played, they've given me more money. Why would I not expect more money next year and the year after that and the year after that? Like, I don't blame him.
The way the league is set up today, guys like Anthony, Ja Morant, LaMelo Ball, when he comes up for contract renewal, they're going to be on the chopping block. It happened to Brandon Ingram. He didn't get more money, even though he was a second overall pick, and he's still putting up decent numbers. Same thing for Jimmy Butler. Pat Riley tried to pull a fast one on him in Miami, and it caused Jimmy Butler to almost hold out during the season, something that NBA fans have never really seen it before on some NFL shit. Julius Randle getting traded from the Knicks. He was up for a contract renewal, and he ended up barely getting a pay increase, even though in the past 3 seasons, he's made 2 All-NBA teams and also 2 All-Star appearances. It's almost as if you're a player that falls in between being, I would say, the 8th all the way to the 20th best player in the league. Owners are going to be very hesitant to pay you at least $40 to $60 million a year. Karl-Anthony Towns is the next person that's going to be on the chopping block for this. Even though his current contract hovers around $50 to $60 million a year, owners are not going to be willing to shell out that kind of money if he's not a difference maker. The NBA today only guarantees the supermax to guys that really move the needle. You got to be on Luka, SGA, Jokic, Giannis kind of level.
They traded for Trae Young. Trae Young's going to get a 9-figure contract. He didn't play. His team's underachieved for like 4 years. He totally just didn't play this year. And they're going to be like, here you go. Here's 9 figures. Thank you. You're our franchise cornerstone.
Trae Young is another person that faced this, but he might get a contract by luck because the Wizards do have to spend a certain amount of money per season, or else they might get penalized. So he might get lucky and get that deal, but it still doesn't negate the fact that his previous team, while he was in a contract year, was very hesitant to pay him. His contract falls in that same sweet spot, paying a guy anywhere from $45 million to about $60. Owners today do not even want to pay co-stars in that price range. They rather give a guy like Luka 80 to 90 mil a year, and the next person will hover around 35 mil a year. That's a major gap right there, but we're about to see in the next few seasons how all this is going to play out with the co-stars.
What is he like? What do you expect? I mean, like, of course, what's his problem for not playing? Like, he didn't play and his team was like, thank you very much for going along with the plan. Here's your check. Like, so, part of this is, like I said, science and money. Too much science and too much money. Now, both of those things, like if I said to somebody on the street, like, we got too much science going on, they'd be like, well, you're a Neanderthal. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, and I said to somebody else, boy, what we have here is we have too much money coming in. You think there's a lot of people going, yeah, you're right, buddy, get out. But like, if you want to get down to the basics, what actually upsets people about the state of the league, the incentive structure is upside down. So, like, sorry, that's a long way away from talking about the Nuggets, but
it's the very same way with Wall Street versus Main Street. The incentive structure is completely flipped. They'll tell you the economy is doing good, but Main Street or just the average person doesn't see it. The NBA right now is doing well financially, but their fan engagement and their influence is waning, especially for younger generations coming up. I would say from the age ranges of 8 years old all the way up into 22, they're not as culturally connected to the NBA as previous generations.
That is essentially what has happened to the NBA. And I've watched it. I'm not philosophical. I was covering the league in 2003. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was covering the league when the max contract was $12 million. And now there's guys I'm writing stories about or talking about who have signed for over 70. And the money is, by the way, the guaranteed cash flow is built in for the next 10 years. There will be $100 million earners in this media rights deal. It's going to happen.
AKA Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Luka, SGA, and Ant-Man. And maybe Jokic, who knows? Maybe if his body continues to hold up. But the real thing to be on the lookout for is when owners give these players that type of contract, because it's almost a guarantee that they're going to be hitting the luxury tax. How much are they willing to pay the co-star? That's going to be the real issue. Us as NBA fans got a nice preview to this when Kevin Durant played in Phoenix. They were paying well over $150 million a season, and they were getting worse and worse and worse. The cap rules today kind of handcuff teams that continuously keep going into the luxury tax season after season. And it was so bad with the Suns that even resigning their own role players cost them extra money. Grayson Allen's contract, I believe it was for about $30 million in a season. When you factor in the luxury tax, it came out to about 75.
So it's not like they can say, okay, well, let's hold on. No, the horse is out of the barn. Like Adam Silver is trying to fix something when the wind and everything is blowing against him, So, and yeah, like I am worried about the long-term effects of it. Just yesterday, I think UBS, Nike's stock is Nike's production, Nike's revenue has been really down, and Nike's stock has been obliterated over the last, 24 months or so.
Now, Windhorse right here mentions UBS. That is a leading bank in Switzerland, and they're also the largest global wealth manager. So right here, he's going to give insight to a person that doesn't necessarily have ties to the NBA or just getting off any kind of narratives. They're straight numbers and facts. But he let Windhorse know that NBA players do not have the same influence as they once did, and it's affecting the shoe sales.
And Nike's stock has been obliterated over the last, 24 months or so, 18 to 24 months. And, this analyst at UBS, and by the way, the analyst at UBS doesn't care. Like, they're not trying to get aggregated. They're not trying to go viral. They're writing to their investors. And they basically said that part of the reason that Nike is selling fewer basketball shoes is that basketball players aren't as popular as they used to be. And so, like, that is the reason that is worth paying attention to, is because that's an independent arbiter who only cares about the data. And that's science too. But, Nike can look at it and say, this is a problem. Our stock is down. Our revenue is down. Like, Nike's like, we got a problem here.
And I guarantee you, that demographic that he's really talking about is a younger demographic. The influence is not the same. The NBA right now is doing well financially, but that influence is definitely waning. That's one hell of a balancing act Adam Silver is juggling right now.
Nike can look at it and say, this is a problem. Our stock is down. Our revenue is down. Like, Nike's like, we got a problem here. The NBA is like, our stock is up enormously. Our revenue is up enormously. Don't tell us about a problem. So that's the, sort of the x-axis right now that is existing in this world. And so I hear people complaining about the NBA, and I say, yeah, you're right. And then I look at the money and the salaries and the franchise values, and they're telling a different tale.
Tale of two stories is definitely real, but Adam Silver, he's probably not going to be the commissioner as soon as some of these problems start to pop up. But it is what it is. We're getting a nice taste right here of just some of the dynamics that's going on with the league. And it's always good to shake up your daily algorithms and just use a different kind of paintbrush as these dynamics play out.